Mark your calendar, May 20th, 2025. Circle it, highlight it, set a reminder. Because that is the date that Microsoft has chosen as the final enforcement deadline for a policy change that most people have not heard about, do not understand, and will not see coming until it is too late to opt out. On that date, if you are running Windows 11 with a Microsoft account, if you have OneDrive installed, if you are using any of the integrated cloud services that come preloaded on modern Windows devices, Microsoft is going to flip a switch. And that switch is going to change the default behavior of your operating system from storing your files locally on your own hard drive to automatically syncing everything to Microsoft's cloud servers, whether you explicitly chose that or not. They are calling it mandatory sync. And what it means in practice is that your documents, your photos, your desktop files, your browser data, your application settings, everything that used to live privately on your computer is going to be uploaded to the cloud and stored on servers that Microsoft controls that are subject to Microsoft's terms of service, that can be accessed by Microsoft's AI training systems, and that can be handed over to law enforcement or other third parties under circumstances defined by Microsoft's privacy policy, not by you. This is not a rumor. This is not speculation. This is official Microsoft policy documented in service updates that began rolling out in March 2025, and that reached final enforcement on May 20th. And the reason most people have not heard about it is because Microsoft has been extraordinarily quiet about the implications. They have framed it as a feature update, enhanced cloud integration, seamless cross-device experience, better data protection through automatic backup. All of those things sound positive. All of those things sound like benefits. But buried in the technical documentation, in the terms of service updates that pop up and ask you to click agree without reading, in the default settings that are enabled without your explicit action, is a fundamental change in the architecture of how Windows handles your data. And that change moves control away from you and toward Microsoft in ways that have serious privacy implications, serious security implications, and for anyone who handles sensitive information, confidential business data, legal documents, medical records, financial information, serious legal and professional implications. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what is happening on May 20th, what mandatory sync actually means at a technical level, why this is the second phase of what privacy advocates are calling the Great Lockdown, the first phase being recall and the AI screenshot monitoring we have already talked about, and what your options are if you want to stay private. Because here's the reality. After May 20th, staying on Windows 11 with a Microsoft account and maintaining genuine local-only file storage is going to require deliberate technical action. It is not going to be the default. It is not going to be the easy path. Microsoft is making Cloud Sync the default and making local-only storage something you have to fight for. And for most users, the path of least resistance is going to be accepting the new defaults, not because they chose cloud storage, but because they did not realize they needed to actively reject it. You have 1 week, maybe less, depending on when you are watching this. 1 week to decide whether you are going to accept Microsoft's new terms, whether you're going to allow your local files to be synced to the cloud, or whether you're going to take action to maintain control over your own data. This is your last week to stay private on Windows. Let me show you what is at stake and what you need to do. Let us start with what mandatory sync actually means, because the term itself is deliberately vague. Microsoft is not saying that on May 20th, they are going to reach into your computer and copy every file to the cloud without your permission. That would be too obvious. That would generate immediate backlash. What they are doing is much more subtle and much more effective. They are changing the default settings for new users and for existing users who have not explicitly configured their sync preferences. And they are changing the behavior of core Windows features, the desktop folder, the documents folder, the pictures folder, so that anything you save to those locations is automatically uploaded to OneDrive, unless you have taken specific steps to disable that behavior. For anyone setting up a new Windows 11 computer after May 20th, the setup process is going to enable OneDrive folder sync by default. You will still have the option to turn it off, but it will be buried in settings, and the prompts during setup will strongly encourage you to keep it on. They will tell you it is for your protection, that it backs up your files in case your computer crashes, that it lets you access your documents from any device. All technically true. But what they will not tell you, at least not prominently, is that once your files are in OneDrive, they are on Microsoft's servers, subject to Microsoft's data policies, and accessible to Microsoft's systems in ways that local-only files are not. For existing users, the ones who already have Windows 11 installed and have been using it for months or years, the change is going to be pushed through a service update. You will get a notification, probably a full-screen prompt, that says something like, protect your files with OneDrive, or Keep your documents safe with automatic backup. It will have a big friendly button that says Turn on Protection or Enable Backup. And if you click that button, or if you dismiss the prompt without reading it carefully and Windows interprets that as consent, OneDrive folder sync will be enabled. Your desktop, documents, and pictures folders will be redirected to OneDrive. And everything in those folders, everything you save to those folders in the future, will be uploaded to the cloud automatically. The files will still appear on your computer. You will still see them in File Explorer, but behind the scenes, they are being synced to Microsoft's servers in real time. And this is where the term mandatory becomes relevant, because once this sync is enabled, turning it off is not straightforward. If you go into OneDrive settings and try to disable folder sync, Windows will warn you that your files might be deleted from your computer. It will tell you that disabling sync could result in data loss. This is technically accurate, because if you have been saving files to what you thought was your local desktop folder, but was actually a OneDrive synced folder, and you disable sync, those files will no longer be in the location where you expect them. They will still be in OneDrive, accessible through a web browser, but they might not be on your local hard drive anymore unless you explicitly download them. This creates a situation where users are functionally locked into using OneDrive once it is enabled, because disabling it is confusing, potentially risky, if you do not understand the file structure and actively discouraged by the operating system. Microsoft has designed the experience to make enabling sync easy and disabling it difficult. And for users who are not technically confident, who do not want to risk losing files, who just want their computer to work without having to think about cloud storage architecture, the path of least resistance is to leave sync enabled and accept that their files are going to the cloud. This is what makes it mandatory in practice, even if it is technically optional. The option to say no exists, but it is hidden, it is scary, and it is designed to make you second guess whether you should do it. That is dark pattern design. That is using interface choices and warning messages to manipulate user behavior. And it is the same approach that Microsoft has used for years to push users toward Microsoft accounts instead of local accounts, toward Edge instead of other browsers, toward Bing instead of other search engines. Make the thing Microsoft wants you to do easy and obvious. Make the alternatives hard and hidden. Now let us talk about what happens to your data once it is in OneDrive, because this is where the privacy and security implications become clear. When your files are stored locally on your computer, the only people who can access them are people who have physical access to your device or remote access through malware or hacking. You control the device, you control the physical security, you control whether you install antivirus software, whether you encrypt your hard drive, whether you use strong passwords. The attack surface is limited to your device and your network. When your files are stored in OneDrive, they are on Microsoft's servers. Microsoft controls those servers. Microsoft controls the security of those servers. Microsoft controls who has access to those servers. And Microsoft's privacy policy, the legal document you agreed to when you signed up for a Microsoft account, gives Microsoft very broad rights to access your data. According to Microsoft's terms, they can access your files if they need to comply with legal obligations, if they need to enforce their terms of service, if they need to protect the security of their systems, or if they need to provide services you have requested. That last category is particularly broad. Providing services includes things like indexing your files so you can search them, scanning your files for malware, analyzing your files with AI to offer suggestions or auto-categorization. All of those services require Microsoft systems to read your files. Not a human necessarily, but automated systems that process your content. Microsoft has also been very clear in recent years that they are using cloud data to train AI models. Copilot, their AI assistant, is built on large language models that are trained on massive datasets. And while Microsoft says they do not train on your personal files without consent, the definition of consent in their terms of service includes using their services with AI features enabled. If you use Windows 11 with Copilot enabled, if you use Office 365 with AI suggestions turned on, you are, according to the terms, consenting to Microsoft analyzing your content to provide those features. And the line between analyzing your content to provide a feature and analyzing your content to improve the models that power that feature is very thin. This is the same issue we have talked about with Google and Chrome. The data collection is justified as necessary to provide services you benefit from. But the secondary use, the model training, the behavioral profiling, the monetization, happens in the background and is not something most users understand or explicitly agree to. There's also the legal access issue. Data stored on Microsoft's servers is subject to legal requests from governments and law enforcement. If a court issues a warrant or subpoena for your OneDrive data, Microsoft will comply. They have to. That is the law. And because your files are on their servers, they can access them and turn them over. If your files are stored only on your local hard drive, Law enforcement would need physical access to your device or a sophisticated remote hacking operation to get that data. The barrier is much higher. Cloud storage lowers that barrier significantly. For most people, this is not a concern. They are not doing anything illegal. They do not expect to be the target of law enforcement. But there are plenty of legitimate reasons why someone might not want their files accessible to third parties even with a warrant. Journalists protecting sources, lawyers protecting client confidentiality, activists in countries with authoritarian governments, whistleblowers, people in abusive relationships who need to keep certain information private, medical professionals handling patient data, businesses handling trade secrets. For all of these use cases, cloud storage introduces risks that local storage does not. And then there is the breach risk. Microsoft's servers are a target. They are a high-value target for hackers, for nation-state actors, for organized crime. And while Microsoft spends enormous amounts of money on security, breaches happen. In 2023, Microsoft disclosed that a hacking group had accessed customer email accounts, including government accounts. In 2024, there were reports of vulnerabilities in Microsoft's cloud infrastructure that could have allowed unauthorized access to user data. These are not hypotheticals. These are real incidents. And every time your data is stored on a centralized server, you are trusting that the security of that server is perfect and that it will remain perfect forever. One breach, one vulnerability, one misconfiguration, and your files could be exposed. When your files are local, the attack surface is your device. When your files are in the cloud, the attack surface is every device that connects to that cloud, every server that stores that cloud data, every network that transmits that data, every employee who has administrative access to those systems. The risk multiplies. Now, Microsoft will tell you, and they have been saying this in their marketing, that OneDrive files are encrypted. And that is true. But there is a very important distinction that most people do not understand. OneDrive uses encryption in transit and encryption at rest. Encryption in transit means the data is encrypted while it is being uploaded from your computer to Microsoft servers, so no one can intercept it on the network. Encryption at rest means the data is encrypted while it is sitting on Microsoft servers, so if someone physically steals a hard drive from a data center, they cannot read the data without the encryption key. Both of those are good. But here's the catch. Microsoft holds the encryption keys, not you. Microsoft. That means Microsoft's systems can decrypt your files anytime they need to. When you search your files through OneDrive's web interface, Microsoft decrypts them so the search can read the content. When you open a file in Office Online, Microsoft decrypts it. When their automated systems scan for malware or analyze content for AI features, they decrypt it. The encryption protects your data from outside attackers. It does not protect your data from Microsoft. There's a different kind of encryption called end-to-end encryption or zero-knowledge encryption, where the encryption keys are held only by you, not by the service provider. Services like Proton Drive, Tresorit, and Sync.com offer this. With true end-to-end encryption, the service provider cannot decrypt your files even if they wanted to, even if they received a legal order, even if their servers were breached, because they do not have the keys. Only you do. Microsoft does not offer this for OneDrive. They could, technically, but they do not, because it would prevent them from offering features that require reading your content. Search, AI suggestions, malware scanning, collaboration tools. All of those require Microsoft to be able to decrypt and read your files, so they keep the keys. And that means your files in OneDrive are private from everyone except Microsoft. And Microsoft is subject to legal obligations, corporate policies, AI training goals, and security vulnerabilities that you do not control. This brings us to the bigger picture. Why is Microsoft doing this now? Why is May 20th the deadline? The answer is the same reason Google is pushing Manifest v3 in Chrome, the same reason Apple is embedding more AI into iOS, the same reason every major tech company is racing to integrate AI into every product. Data. AI requires data, massive amounts of data. The more data you have, the better your models, the more useful your AI features, the more competitive you are in the market. And user-generated data, the documents you write, the photos you take, the files you organize, is incredibly valuable for training models. Microsoft wants your data in their cloud because data in the cloud is data they can access, analyze, and use. Data on your local hard drive is invisible to them. They cannot use it. They cannot learn from it. They cannot build products around it. Getting as much data as possible into OneDrive is a strategic priority. And May 20th is the deadline because that is when the 2026 service update cycle officially begins. Microsoft operates on annual update cycles. The May 2025 update is the last update before the major 2026 Windows release, and Microsoft wants the Cloud Sync infrastructure fully deployed, fully adopted, and fully normalized before they roll out the next generation of AI features that will be built on top of that data. Privacy advocates are calling this the second phase of the Great Lockdown. The first phase was Recall, the AI screenshot feature that records everything on your screen. That gives Microsoft visibility into your real-time activity. The second phase is mandatory sync, getting your files into the cloud. That gives Microsoft access to your documents, your history, your creative work, your personal information. Together, these two features create a complete surveillance architecture. What you're doing right now, Recall, what you have created and saved, OneDrive. And both are being positioned as helpful features, productivity tools, AI-powered conveniences. But the effect is total visibility. Microsoft can see what you do, what you make, what you save, what you search for, what you write, what you photograph, everything. And the deadline, May 20th, is when this becomes the default experience for most Windows users. So what do? You have options, but they are not all easy, and they require you to make decisions now. This is your last week to act before the deadline. Here are your choices. Option 1, accept it. Decide that the convenience of cloud sync, the automatic backup, the cross-device access is worth the privacy trade-off. Enable OneDrive, let your files sync, and trust Microsoft's security and privacy policies. This is the easiest path. It is what Microsoft wants you to do. It is what most users will do. And for some people, it is a reasonable choice. If you do not handle sensitive information, if you trust Microsoft, if you value convenience over privacy, this might be fine for you. But you should make that choice knowingly, not passively. If you are going to use OneDrive, understand what it means. Your files are on Microsoft servers. They can be accessed by Microsoft's systems. They can be subject to legal requests. They are encrypted, but Microsoft holds the keys. Make the choice with open eyes. Option 2, disable sync and stay on Windows. This is for users who want to keep using Windows but do not want their files in the cloud. It is possible, but it requires some technical steps. First, if you're setting up a new computer or doing a fresh Windows install, during the setup process, when Windows asks you to sign in with a Microsoft account, look for the small text link that says sign in with a local account instead, or offline account. It is deliberately hidden, usually in the bottom left corner. Click that. Create a local account instead of a Microsoft account. This will prevent OneDrive from being enabled by default. If you are already using Windows with a Microsoft account and OneDrive is enabled or being pushed on you, go into Settings, click on Accounts, and look for the option to switch to a local account. This will disconnect your Windows login from your Microsoft account. You will lose some features, like syncing settings across devices, but you will regain control over your files. Next, open OneDrive settings, go to the Backup tab, and turn off backup for desktop, documents, and pictures. Windows will warn you about potential data loss. Ignore the warning if you understand that your files will stay local. Then, go to the Sync tab and click Unlink this PC. This completely disconnects OneDrive from your computer. Finally, uninstall OneDrive entirely. Open Settings, go to Apps, find OneDrive, and uninstall it. You can reinstall it later if you change your mind, but removing it ensures it cannot be re-enabled by a future update without your knowledge. Option 3, switch to a privacy-respecting cloud service. If you do want cloud backup and cross-device sync, but you do not want to give Microsoft access to your files, use a service that offers true end-to-end encryption. Proton Drive, from the makers of Proton Mail, offers end-to-end encrypted cloud storage with a generous free tier and paid plans for more storage. Tresorit is another option, focused on business users, with zero-knowledge encryption and compliance with European data protection laws. Sync.com is a Canadian service that offers end-to-end encryption and is more affordable than Tresorit. All of these services work on Windows. You install their client, it creates a sync folder on your computer, and anything you put in that folder is encrypted locally before being uploaded. The service provider never has access to your encryption keys. They cannot read your files. They cannot hand them over to authorities, even if ordered to, because they do not have the keys to decrypt them. This is true privacy-respecting cloud storage. You get the convenience of backup and sync without sacrificing control. Option 4, leave Windows entirely. This is the most extreme option, but it is worth mentioning because for some users, it is the right choice. If you're tired of fighting Microsoft's defaults, tired of disabling features that get re-enabled with updates, tired of an operating system that treats your data as a resource to be harvested, you can switch to Linux. Distributions like Linux Mint, Ubuntu, and Fedora offer full-featured desktop environments that look and feel similar to Windows, support most common software, and give you complete control over your system. There is no built-in cloud sync unless you choose to install it. There is no AI monitoring your activity. There is no mandatory account sign-in. There is no telemetry being sent to a corporation. You own your computer. You control your data. The learning curve is real. Some Windows software will not run on Linux, though alternatives exist for most things. And compatibility layers like Wine can run many Windows apps. But if privacy is your priority, if you handle sensitive information professionally, if you are philosophically opposed to surveillance capitalism, Linux is a genuine option. And it is free, completely free. No license fees, no subscriptions, no hidden costs. Whichever option you choose, you need to choose now, this week, before May 20th. Because after that date, the defaults change, the prompts get more aggressive, the path to staying private gets harder. And once your files are synced to OneDrive, once Microsoft has a copy of your documents on their servers, you cannot unring that bell. You can delete them from OneDrive, but you cannot know for certain that they have been deleted from Microsoft's backups, from their AI training data sets, from any systems that may have already processed them. The only way to stay private is to prevent the upload in the first place. And that requires action now. Let me be very clear about what is at stake here. This is not just about file storage. This is about control. Control over your own data. Control over who can see what you create. Control over whether your personal information, your creative work, your private documents are used to train AI models, are subject to legal requests, are vulnerable to data breaches, or are analyzed by automated systems you did not consent to. For decades, the default assumption was that your computer was yours. The files on your hard drive were yours. They stayed on your device unless you explicitly chose to upload them somewhere. That assumption is being eroded. Microsoft, Google, Apple, all of the major platform companies are moving toward a model where your data lives in their cloud by default, where local storage is the exception rather than the rule, where privacy is something you have to opt into rather than something that is protected by default. And they are doing this not because it is better for you, but because it is better for them. Because data is the most valuable resource in the modern economy. And the more of your data they have, the more valuable their AI products, the more targeted their services, the more powerful their platforms. You do not have to accept this. You do not have to let Microsoft turn your computer into a terminal that feeds data to their cloud. You do not have to sync your files just because the operating system prompts you to. You have choices. Limited choices. Harder choices than they should be, but choices nonetheless. Use a local account instead of a Microsoft account. Disable OneDrive. Use end-to-end encrypted cloud storage if you need sync. Or switch to an operating system that respects your ownership of your own device. Any of these options is better than passively accepting defaults that were designed to benefit Microsoft, not you. May 20th is the deadline, the final lockdown. After that date, staying private on Windows requires fighting against the operating system instead of working with it. It requires knowing where the hidden settings are, knowing which prompts to dismiss, knowing how to disable services that get re-enabled with updates. It requires constant vigilance. And for most people, that is not sustainable, which is exactly what Microsoft is counting on. They are counting on you getting tired of fighting. They are counting on you accepting the new defaults because resisting them is too much work. They are counting on you valuing convenience over control. And for a lot of people, they will be right, but you do not have to be one of those people. This is your last week, your last chance to make a deliberate choice before the choice is made for you by default. Disable OneDrive. Switch to a local account. Move to end-to-end encrypted storage, or leave Windows for a platform that does not treat your data as a product. Whatever you decide, decide now. Decide consciously. Because on May 21st, the day after the deadline, the Windows you are using will not be the same Windows you have been using. It will be a platform where cloud sync is assumed, where local-only storage is a deviation from the norm, where your files are expected to live on Microsoft's servers. And if you have not taken action by then, that will be your new reality. The clock is ticking. You have days, maybe hours depending on when you're watching this. This is your last week to stay private. Use it.